President Trump announcing the framework for a trade deal with the European Union. The deal comes after months of talks and avoids a potentially destructive trade war. The framework calls for a 15% across-the-board tariff on imports from the 27-nation bloc, the EU. The president calls it the biggest deal ever made. His words, the biggest deal ever made. CNN's Matt Egan is joining us right now. Matt, walk us through this deal.
Well, Wolf, this is significant because it means that both sides have averted what would have been a self-destructed transatlantic trade war. A lot of the details here, though, they do remain murky. This is not a legally binding agreement. I haven't even seen a White House fact sheet on this. But one thing we do know is the tariff rate. This framework calls for a 15% tariff on imports from the EU, and this is lower than the 30% rate that had been threatened by the president starting on Friday. However, let's make no mistake here. This is not a cut to tariffs. This is an increase. It's an increase from the current level of 10%. It's an increase from the 2024 average tariff rate of 1.2%. And economists, they say that the bulk of these higher tariffs are going to be paid by consumers and businesses. And look, the EU is the biggest source of imports into the United States. Last year alone, the U.S. bought more than $600 billion of goods from the EU, everything from pharmaceuticals and cars to car parts, autos, alcohol, and machinery as well. As far as what else is in this, again, the details are a little bit murky. The president says the EU has agreed to buy $750 billion of U.S. energy. He says that the EU has agreed to invest an extra $600 billion in the U.S. and in a win for European consumers and U.S. businesses, there's a 0% tariff on U.S. exports to the EU. But at the end of the day here, countries that reach a deal with the United States, they face higher tariffs than they did a year ago. Countries that don't reach a deal, they also face higher tariffs than a year ago. And that's why Mary Lovely from the Peterson Institute, she told me that U.S. businesses and consumers still remain the biggest losers from these trade deals.